Welcome to the Probate Realtor Show, your one source for selling and buying real estate through trust and probate. Hear directly from the best attorneys and trusted advisors on how executors and administrators navigate the probate process in and out of court. Being a personal representative or successor trustee can be a daunting task, and often beneficiaries don't have a clear plan. Let us help you make the right decision for your clients, your family, and your legacy. And now, here's your host, the probate realtor himself, Matias Baker Masucci.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of our show. Today, we are talking to Jennifer McNeil-Lozano. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matias.
Jennifer is an estate planning attorney at McNeil-Lozano Law, which is a boutique estate planning firm. And we're very excited to have you on the show. As we were doing the pre-show, it turns out we know a lot of people in common. That's what happens when you're in the estate planning world in Southern California. Today, we're going to be talking about planning for incapacitation. And how that ties in to estate planning. So the first question I have for you, Jennifer, is what is incapacitation?
Incapacitation is a determination by, that's either two doctors, a disability panel, potentially your spouse and an attending physician, when you're unable to take care of your own welfare, assets, and livelihood. And when that determination is made, then that's when someone else would be able to step into your shoes if you had the proper planning and take care of you in every capacity, depending upon how we draft that document.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. Now, one of the things that goes, hand in hand, I guess, with incapacitation is, a lot of these things, people plan for it and you're hoping that it doesn't happen. But sometimes there are signs that may be something down the road, like Alzheimer's, and things like that. Now, from my experience speaking to doctors, as I had mentioned before the show, that I'd given talks at Cedars-Sinai about the subject, people are resistant. And from visiting your website and talking to you, I know that you have a very good personal approach to estate planning, which is so key. How do you overcome the resistance when somebody says, look, no, I don't need to worry about that. Like that's never going to happen to me, or the signs of Alzheimer's, whatever, it's not going to happen. How do you find, to navigate this delicate subject with family members?
So are you speaking about after the planning is in place and we're at a point,
or when the planning, or when you're doing the planning? Like, how do you explain to somebody, look, you should plan for incapacitation as well, and they say, no, I don't need to plan for incapacitation? How do you let them know how important it is to plan for incapacitation?
Well, in the planning stage, it's incredibly important to do a proper estate plan because of the fact that if you have the proper plan in place, you're able to potentially avoid any conservatorship.
Right.
Because who you nominate as your healthcare agent would be able to step into that role for you. So you're able to have a little bit of control in a time when you're feeling a bit out of control. And I think that makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. And then we discuss how you would determine the incapacity. And oftentimes, of course, naturally in a married situation, people definitely trust their spouse to make that determination with the doctor. I think it's really challenging in times when people don't really have anyone close, like they're not married and they don't have children. And I do find that people tend to like a disability panel where they have anybody that happens to be in their close-knit circle come together to make that determination. And that gives them a little bit of peace. I think it is challenging because when it does come to a situation where that determination has been made, there is resistance. Naturally, it's challenging. Because I'm in a situation right now where I feel like we potentially need to get a certificate of independent review to just ensure that the plan will work as intended. Because oftentimes when people are starting to lose capacity, they might feel it and they end up doing an effective, immediate power of attorney because they're starting to forget things. They're getting forgetful and they're not paying their bills on time. Or you can just kind of see they leave the gas on in the kitchen. I mean, it becomes a matter of safety as well. And when you're able to show the incapacitated individual, that it's for their benefit and they're trying to protect them and they're surrounded by their loved ones, I think that's where it really becomes helpful.
I have two follow-up questions about what you talked. Our audience should somewhat be familiar with an independent review because we have discussed that before. But before I go there, I wanted to talk to you about the panel. Can the individual that's doing the estate planning decide who will sit on that panel to determine whether they are incapacitated or not? Like you said, coming together, like the family coming together, et cetera. If I am making a plan, can I say, well, the person who I want to determine whether I'm incapacitated or not is my wife, or the person that I want to, is that something that you can put in your estate plan, or is that something like that is going to be?
Yes, I put that into the trust, and I have any document that might talk about incapacity, I have it referenced back to the trust, and that's where the definition of incapacity would come from.
Okay.
There's several that I would draft in for the flexibility. However, the first is all, especially with a married couple, it's oftentimes the spouse with the attending physician. Obviously, you need to have a doctor giving some sort of determination and the spouse making that determination as well. Then oftentimes people will see two doctors or two physicians, actually, is the language. And it just came to my attention that in practice, that oftentimes it's like a neurological psychologist, psychiatrist that's actually giving that determination. And by definition, they're not considered a doctor, and they would have to get two independent doctors in addition to them. And it creates quite a hurdle for the family when you're at a period of time. And as you mentioned, there's people that are resistant to the term incapacity and all that comes with it. So this elder law attorney I was speaking with was really adamant about, instead of using physician, saying doctor.
Right.
Because it opens it up to the psychologist, and anything that actually makes it easier down the road for the family. So I find that a lot of my clients do like disability panels, where they have all of their healthcare agents come together, and it's pretty much, they can consult with the attending physician, and it's like by a majority decision. Of course, some people want unanimous. I definitely never recommend that. That once again would create quite a hurdle.
Right.
You have to draft in a lot of contingencies and so forth. But it becomes rather challenging for people, as I mentioned before, who don't have anybody in their life. And it's incapacity is a delicate situation to navigate.
That makes total sense. Obviously, because I mean, it's been, nobody had ever heard about conservatorships until Britney Spears got put in a conservatorship. And now it became like, and there was so much press and resistance, like whether she really belonged in one, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So we don't want somebody to go to court. And, I did leave the stove on the other day. So if my wife went to court and said, look, Matias, he's a little out of it, I got to put him in it
would be more than just one time. Okay?
Yes,
you're okay.
Absolutely. Agreed. And I'm sure, but people want to be protected. So I understand why people want, an opinion. And this is a very good point you made about the difference between physicians and doctor, and how the language should be specific. Crafted. Let me ask you a question now, going back to the independent review. What are some of the things that you said that you have a situation that you think that maybe an independent review is called for, and what are some of the red flags that maybe you think when doing the planning? And we'll get to the planning in a minute. When doing the planning, you're thinking, okay, we're going to need an independent review for this. Can you give us some examples that you've encountered in your practice?
I think a lot of times when maybe a third party, or it could be a third party, or even a child is the one to first reach out to you.
Okay.
And wanting to make changes for their benefit.
Right.
And then they bring in the potential client, and you can sense that there's some diminishing capacity happening, but there's moments of lucidity at the same time. And you're trying to understand if this is due to undue influence, or if they even understand what decisions they're making. Oftentimes in these situations, that party, whether it's going to be a child or a third party, comes in with the client, and you need to make sure to speak to that client separately.
Got
And
it.
that they understand what they're doing. And oftentimes if they're nominating this person in a fiduciary capacity, as well as potentially giving them more as a beneficiary, it could open itself up to contests later on.
Right.
So by getting a certificate of independent review, you're able to avoid that, and it ultimately would protect the plan that you're creating that's in place, as well as that potential change, that beneficiary or that fiduciary.
That makes sense. Do you ever recommend, when it's appropriate, that rather than a family member is maybe hiring a professional fiduciary to handle the estate? Is that a situation, like you want to avoid any litigation or things like that down the line? Maybe it will be better to nominate somebody who does this professionally?
Yes, I think especially in an incapacity situation, it might be a really good avenue to go. I think you need to look at the whole picture. Obviously, what family members are involved,
Right.
how they get along, the size of the estate as well, because that could be really expensive to get a corporate fiduciary. There are a lot of independent fiduciaries outside of the corporate fiduciaries that could fit that bill. That
makes sense. Let me ask you a question. What if somebody says as a resistant, like, look, I have a power of attorney. I don't have to worry about planning for incapacitation or medical directives or whatnot. How do you handle that objection? Like they say, I could just do a power of attorney. Why do I need to plan any of these things? When I lose my mind, I'll do a power of attorney. My wife will take care of everything. I don't need to worry about that.
It's too late. Yes, once you lose your mind, it's too late. And that's the part that's difficult to understand for a lot of people, because once you start seeing some of those signs, that's the part that you hope that someone comes forward and tries to get the power of attorney, because there is a period of time as you start seeing those signs that you still can get a power of attorney, and they still have capacity. They haven't lost it. And but once it's completely determined by a doctor and in the records, there's nothing more to be done.
That makes total sense. Yeah. Now, planning for incapacitation is part of a broader plan, which is the estate plan, which is essentially the fulcrum of your business. That's the important part, is the estate plan. So tell us a little bit about the approach you have when a client comes to you and said, Jennifer, I'm ready to do some estate planning. What are some of these, our audience, if they do reach out to you, what are some of the things that they should expect?
Well, there's definitely an intake process where I gather a lot of information regarding the family, regarding the asset profile. So I'm able to kind of see which direction we're going. I'll have a consult, and in that consult, get a bit of a clearer idea of why they're coming to me, what kind of spurred this on in the first place, because oftentimes estate planning is something that's on the bottom of the to-do list. And then a slew of questions, naturally, and I will kind of help them get to a solution and a particular design that's going to meet their needs. That's the big picture. When they engage me, then we end up getting into a design meeting. And through the design meeting, we'd actually go through a number of further questions, delving deep into each actual document that I'd be drafting. So when we talk about estate planning, it's not just a will or a trust. We're talking about, as we've been talking about, the Advanced Healthcare Directive, or a power of attorney, a HIPAA authorization. And we talk about every single document, because one of the things that's really important in my practice is ensuring that everyone understands what these documents are, how to use them. And that's why I always encourage my clients for like a year afterwards, making sure that everything's properly funded. If you're not sure about a particular document, to reach out to me and let's talk about it. I find so many times people reach out to me with, they try to go LegalZoom route or something like that, and they don't even know what they have in that folder. And nothing's funded. So that's a really important aspect of my service.
That's great. Yeah. And that's in every practice, I always say this, you really do get what you pay for. So if you are doing your estate planning online, be very, because these things often, I'm learning this more and more, like they fail. this estate plan fails. And when the estate plan fails, and then you got to go through probate or whatever, the things that happen to you, you wish you would have done an estate plan, because the costs are considerable of going through probate. So,
well, a perfect example. Yeah. Someone who did go through LegalZoom, they felt the peace of mind, thinking that they had everything in place, but then there's no one from LegalZoom that follows up in terms of like doing, going through your assets and making sure which asset needs to be funded properly, or beneficiary designation updates. And then a number of those assets did not have beneficiary designations and were not properly titled. And then you had to file a petition to try to get that into the trust. And yes, that ends up being $5,000 to $10,000 down the road, where you could have had it handled appropriately.
Absolutely. Very true. Now, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your journey. I'm always fascinating.
Okay.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in LA, Los Angeles, California. Yes.
A native. I love
LA
it.
native, born and raised.
And what made you decide to go to law school?
I went to law school when I was in entertainment prior to starting my own
okay.
And I was at 20th Century Fox, and I worked in the legal department, and I did all the cast contracts for films.
Oh, nice.
And so I went to Loyola in the evening. I decided that I was doing like paralegal type work there, and I decided that I wanted to be in-house counsel, and went to Loyola in the evening while working at Fox during the day.
Wow.
And following also in my father's footsteps, he's an attorney, graduated from Loyola as well. So it was a family legacy, and always thought I'd be in-house in the studios. And at the birth of my first child, I had a trajectory, and as a young family, being responsible, started thinking about estate planning and started helping fellow friend families. And my practice initially was, when I left Fox, I had my own practice, and it was like entertainment and estate planning. And pretty much Trust and Estates took over, and it's like blossomed from there. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's very nice.
It's very satisfying practice, for sure. Yes. I really enjoy like being of service. I love the interaction, the counseling with people on a personal level. And just, I love getting that feedback when people say that they just feel so much better, afterwards. And they love my binder and all the rest.
That is wonderful. And truth, estate planning is a practice of law that, let me just say that I do deal with a lot of attorneys that do all sorts of things, but the happiest attorney I deal with, generally speaking, are in estate planning. Those are the people that have the biggest smiles usually. Okay. Before I let you go, this is how I end all of my episodes. I have a list of 30 questions, and I want you to pick a random number. They're all numbered from 1 to 30. Okay. I would love for you to pick a random number, and I will ask you that question, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, I will say 23.
Okay. In your opinion, what quality helps a person most in life?
I'm a big proponent of personal development, so this is a good one. Yes, I'd say courageousness.
Okay. So
I think by being courageous, you're able to put one foot in front of the other. No matter, I think a lot of times people stop or don't have, the discipline, motivation, anything that they ultimately want. They stop themselves because of fear. And fear is really much overcome by being courageous. And you can kind of shift the perspective of the definition depending upon what it is that what your goal is, what you're aiming for. So whether it is even like starting a podcast, for example, you're out of your comfort zone, just be courageous and do it. If it's a matter of starting your own law practice when you're used to being in-house all the time. And it's just that one step in front of the other and being courageous. And I think it just always helps you reach your dreams. That's great. So the ability to take chances, and commit to them. Very nice. I really like it. If you embody courageousness as opposed to chance, taking chances, I feel like is more like gambling. Okay. I feel like being courageous, you always win. You got a plan. Courageousness is like there's a plan behind your action. Is that? Yeah, and I think courageousness creates consistency. I mean, it could go on. I love it. No, I love it. This is great. Well, it's been such a pleasure. Time really flew. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Before I let you go, I want to
we're gonna have your firm's contact information, your contact information, whatever we share with our audience. Can you please let our audience know what is the best way to get a hold of you?
You can call my office. You can shoot an email. You can also reach my my website. Website is McNeil-Lozano.com. Phone number 424-276-7522. And you can also reach me directly, Jennifer@McNeil-Lozano.com.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. For
yeah, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. We're probably going to have you back. We'll find another topic.
That would be great.
Jennifer, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.